Have you ever wondered why the person who acted like they could live without you is suddenly the one who can't stop thinking about you? Why someone who pulled away, stayed silent, ignored your messages, and made you feel invisible can one day become overwhelmed by the very absence they once created? It feels confusing. It feels unfair. And if you've ever loved someone with an avoidant personality, you've probably asked yourself this question more times than you can count. But what if everything you've been told about this situation is missing the most important piece? What if the moment they finally start missing you has almost nothing to do with chasing them, convincing them, or proving your worth? What if the real answer is hidden inside human psychology, and understanding it could completely change the way you see love, loss, and even yourself? Stay with this until the very end, because by the time this video is over, you won't just understand why an avoidant finally breaks and starts missing you. You'll understand why the strongest position you can ever be in is the one where you stop needing someone else's validation to feel complete. That realization doesn't just change relationships, it changes your life. There is a painful truth that many people never hear. When someone with an avoidant attachment style walks away, your first instinct is often to move toward them. You try harder. You explain yourself again. You replay every conversation in your head. You wonder if saying the right words could have changed everything. You convince yourself that if they could only see how deeply you love them, they would finally come back. But every time you chase, every time you beg for clarity, every time you sacrifice your own peace just to keep the connection alive, something inside you quietly begins to disappear. That is where the real heartbreak begins. Not when they leave, but when you slowly leave yourself. Human psychology teaches us something powerful. People often fail to value what is constantly available to them. Not because they are evil, not because they never cared, but because the human mind easily adapts to certainty. When someone believes you will always be there no matter how they behave, they stop feeling the emotional weight of losing you. The relationship becomes predictable. The urgency disappears. And without realizing it, they stop confronting what your presence truly means. This is especially true for someone who avoids emotional closeness. Distance feels safe to them. Vulnerability feels dangerous. Instead of facing uncomfortable emotions, they distract themselves. They stay busy. They convince themselves they don't need anyone. On the surface, they look calm. Sometimes they even look happier after walking away. That image can destroy your confidence if you don't understand what is really happening beneath it, because appearances lie. Just because someone looks unaffected doesn't mean they are at peace. Silence is not always strength. Sometimes silence is simply a wall built to keep emotions from escaping. And the strange thing about walls is that they don't only keep other people out. Eventually, they trap the person who built them. Many people make the mistake of thinking that missing someone happens immediately after separation. But that isn't how avoidant psychology usually works. At first, freedom feels like relief. They finally have space. No difficult conversations, no emotional pressure, no expectations. They tell themselves this is exactly what they wanted, but life has a quiet way of revealing what emotions try to hide. Days turn into weeks. Familiar routines become empty. The message they expected never comes. The person who always reached out suddenly becomes silent. The emotional safety net they took for granted is no longer there, and for the first time, they are forced to experience something they spent so much energy avoiding. Loss. Real loss is different from imagined loss. Imagined loss can be ignored. Real loss cannot. This is the moment that changes everything. Not because you finally found the perfect words, not because you posted the perfect picture, not because you made them jealous, but because reality has replaced assumption. They can no longer assume you will always wait. They can no longer assume your heart will remain exactly where they left it. And that realization creates a psychological shift that no amount of chasing ever could. Here's something even deeper. The strongest people are not the ones who never miss anyone. They are the ones who stop allowing their happiness to depend on being missed. Think about that for a moment. So much emotional suffering comes from waiting for another person to realize your value, waiting for an apology, waiting for a text, waiting for closure, waiting for proof that you mattered. But every day spent waiting is another day your own life remains on hold. What if the greatest victory isn't hearing them say they miss you? What if the greatest victory is becoming someone who no longer needs those words to know their own worth? That idea scares people because it demands responsibility. It asks you to stop measuring your value by someone else's attention. It asks you to rebuild the confidence that was slowly handed away piece by piece. It asks you to become emotionally powerful enough that your peace cannot be controlled by another person's choices. That is not easy, but it is transformational. The truth is, people are drawn toward strength they cannot manipulate. They notice confidence that doesn't beg. They feel the absence of someone who genuinely moves forward instead of standing still. And whether they admit it or not, they begin to question the decision they once felt so certain about. Not because you forced them, because you changed. This video is not about teaching you how to make someone suffer. It is about teaching you why your greatest power has never been convincing someone to stay. Your greatest power has always been becoming the kind of person who refuses to abandon themselves, even when someone else does. And that is where the real story begins. Now comes the part that almost nobody talks about. Most people become so focused on whether the avoidant will miss them that they completely overlook what is happening inside the avoidant's mind after the distance begins. They assume silence means certainty. They believe that no message means no feelings. They mistake a calm appearance for emotional freedom. Yet the human mind rarely works in such a simple way. An avoidant does not process emotional pain the same way most people do. While someone with an anxious heart feels everything immediately, an avoidant often pushes difficult emotions into the background. It is not because they have no heart. It is because their mind has learned to survive by creating distance from discomfort. That survival strategy may have protected them years ago, but it also prevents them from facing emotions in a healthy way. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack every day without realizing how much it weighs. At first, it feels normal because you have become used to it. But the moment you stop walking, the weight suddenly becomes impossible to ignore. Emotions work in a similar way. Constant distractions keep hidden feelings buried. Once life becomes quieter, everything that was avoided starts demanding attention. This is why time often changes everything. In the beginning, they may feel relief. They finally have complete control over their space. There are no emotional conversations, no difficult questions, no pressure to explain themselves. It almost feels like they escaped something overwhelming. Their brain rewards that feeling because avoiding discomfort has always seemed like the safest option. But relief is not the same as peace. Relief fades, peace remains. When the excitement of freedom begins to disappear, reality slowly takes its place. Ordinary moments become reminders. A favorite song suddenly carries a different meaning. A familiar place feels strangely empty. A small memory appears without invitation. They try to ignore it. They keep moving. They stay busy. Yet the mind has an interesting habit. The harder you try not to think about something meaningful, the more often it quietly returns. Psychologists have studied this pattern for years. When people actively suppress thoughts, those thoughts often become even stronger over time. It is almost like telling yourself not to imagine the color blue. The mind instantly creates the image anyway. Emotions behave in much the same way. What is buried does not disappear. It waits. That waiting period becomes incredibly important. During this time, something unexpected starts happening. The version of you that existed in their everyday life is no longer available. Your voice is gone. Your routines together have ended. The comfort of knowing you would probably answer if they reached out has disappeared. What once felt permanent is now uncertain, and uncertainty changes perception. People often appreciate something most when they realize it is no longer guaranteed. This is not manipulation, it is human nature. Certainty allows the mind to relax. Uncertainty forces the mind to pay attention. Think about how often people overlook ordinary things until they are gone. Good health becomes precious after illness. Time with family becomes priceless after loss. Opportunities become valuable after they disappear. Relationships follow the same psychological pattern. The avoidant begins comparing the present with the past. At first, those comparisons are small. They notice the absence of familiar conversations. Then they remember moments they ignored before. They recall laughter that once seemed ordinary. They think about your kindness during times they never fully appreciated. Memory has a remarkable way of polishing what was once taken for granted. This does not mean they suddenly become a completely different person overnight. Human behavior rarely changes that quickly. Internal conflict usually arrives before outward action. Inside their mind, two forces begin pulling in opposite directions. One side whispers, "Keep moving forward, don't look back." The other quietly asks, "What if I walked away from something that truly mattered?" That question becomes difficult to silence. Every unanswered question creates mental tension. Every memory that returns without permission adds another layer. Every peaceful moment becomes interrupted by thoughts they believed they had already escaped. Here is something many people fail to understand. Missing someone is rarely caused by loneliness alone. It is often caused by contrast. Contrast is what makes the mind notice value. When your presence is replaced by your absence, comparison begins. They compare conversations with silence, warmth with emotional distance, familiarity with emptiness, shared experiences with ordinary routines that suddenly feel less meaningful. This comparison is powerful because the brain naturally searches for what once created emotional significance. It starts connecting small details. It starts asking questions that were never asked before. It starts recognizing emotional security that was invisible while it still existed. That is why chasing rarely creates appreciation. Constant pursuit removes contrast. Stepping back allows reality to create it naturally. This is where many people become impatient. They expect immediate answers. They want instant closure. They check their phone every few minutes. They watch every online activity. They search for signs instead of building their own future. Without realizing it, they hand over control of their emotions. Real strength begins when you stop monitoring another person's emotional journey and begin investing in your own. Every hour spent analyzing someone else's silence is an hour stolen from your own growth. Every moment spent wondering what they are thinking is a moment you could have used to rebuild your confidence. Ironically, this shift creates the greatest difference. When you become fully engaged in your own life, you stop acting from fear. Your decisions become healthier, your energy changes, your identity becomes stronger because it is no longer built around someone's acceptance. That transformation cannot be faked. People feel authenticity. And authenticity leaves a lasting impression because it comes from genuine inner stability, not from trying to impress anyone. While the avoidant wrestles with emotions they delayed for so long, your own path begins moving in a completely different direction. One road is filled with suppressed feelings, finally demanding attention. The other is filled with self-respect, emotional maturity, and quiet confidence. Those two roads will eventually meet again in one way or another. When they do, the person who kept growing will never be the same person who was left behind. At this point, a powerful shift begins to happen, but it does not begin inside them. It begins inside you. This is the moment where you stop asking, "When will they realize what they lost?" and start asking a far more important question. Who am I becoming because of this experience? That single question has the power to change everything. It takes your attention away from someone else's choices and places it back where it has always belonged. On your own life, many people believe healing means forgetting. That is not true. Healing means remembering without falling apart. It means thinking about someone without feeling the need to chase them. It means accepting that love can exist without controlling your future. That kind of emotional freedom is not something that appears overnight. It is built one decision at a time. Every day gives you a choice. You can wake up and replay old conversations, searching for hidden meanings that no longer matter. Or you can wake up and build a version of yourself that no painful memory can destroy. The first path keeps you connected to yesterday. The second creates a future that is no longer limited by the past. Human psychology tells us that identity shapes behavior more than emotion does. Feelings come and go. Identity remains. If you keep telling yourself that you are someone who was abandoned, rejected, or forgotten, your actions will slowly match that belief. You will hesitate. You will doubt yourself. You will expect disappointment before anything even happens. But if you begin seeing yourself differently, your actions begin changing without force. Imagine looking into a mirror every morning and no longer seeing a person waiting to be chosen. Instead, you see someone becoming wiser through pain. Someone becoming stronger because life demanded growth. Someone who refuses to let one relationship define an entire future. That inner picture changes the way you walk into every room. It changes your posture, it changes your decisions, it changes the energy you bring into conversations. People notice these changes long before you ever speak about them. Confidence is rarely announced, it is observed. This is why the most meaningful transformation happens in silence. There is no need to prove anything. There is no need to post hidden messages or create situations designed to get attention. Real growth has no interest in performance, it is focused on progress. There is something fascinating about the human mind. It naturally responds to consistency. One good day means very little. 2 good days create hope. Weeks of steady improvement create belief. Months of discipline create a completely different identity. That is why small daily choices matter more than dramatic promises. Reading instead of overthinking. Exercising instead of sitting with endless regret. Learning instead of complaining. Building instead of begging. These actions may seem ordinary, but together they create extraordinary change. Each positive decision sends a quiet message to your own mind. I am worth investing in. That message becomes stronger every time you repeat it. Slowly, your brain begins accepting this new story as truth. Self-respect grows through action, not through empty words. You cannot think your way into confidence while continuing habits that destroy it. Your mind believes what your behavior repeatedly demonstrates. This is why discipline becomes such an important part of emotional recovery. Discipline is not punishment. It is proof that your future deserves protection. Every promise you keep to yourself strengthens trust within your own mind. Every goal you complete reminds you that your value was never dependent on another person's approval. As this process continues, something unexpected happens. The emotional pressure begins disappearing. You stop checking for signs. You stop creating imaginary conversations in your head. You stop measuring every day by whether someone contacted you. Your happiness slowly becomes independent. That independence is one of the most attractive qualities any person can develop, not because it makes someone else return, but because it gives you peace regardless of what they decide. Ironically, this is often the stage where the avoidant begins noticing the biggest difference. Why? Because people expect patterns to continue. They expect familiar reactions. They expect the same emotional cycle to repeat itself. When that pattern suddenly ends, curiosity appears. The person who once seemed available now seems focused. The individual who once waited now seems busy creating a meaningful life. The emotional atmosphere has changed. This creates a question inside their mind that did not exist before. What happened? That question becomes more powerful than endless explanations ever could. It encourages reflection. It challenges assumptions. It opens space for thoughts that had been ignored. Not because you tried to create mystery, because your life genuinely moved forward. There is a lesson here that reaches far beyond one relationship. Every challenge carries 2 possible outcomes. It can make you smaller, or it can introduce you to a version of yourself you never knew existed. Many people spend years hoping painful experiences never happen, but strength is rarely developed during comfortable seasons. Pressure reveals character. Loss reveals priorities. Disappointment reveals where growth is needed. You are not becoming stronger because everything went according to plan. You are becoming stronger because you refuse to let one painful chapter become the title of your entire story. That decision creates quiet power, the kind that cannot be borrowed, the kind that cannot be taken away. As your foundation becomes stronger, something inside you finally settles. You begin understanding that love should never require you to lose your identity. Caring deeply about another person should never come at the cost of abandoning your own dreams, your own peace, or your own dignity. The greatest relationships are not built by 2 incomplete people searching for rescue. They are built by 2 emotionally healthy individuals who choose each other without sacrificing themselves. And when you finally understand that truth, you stop living with the fear of being left. Because the person you trust most is no longer someone else. It is the person you have become.